What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Workshop. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to sharpen every knife you own on the new professional precision adjust knife sharpener. For every knife in this video, we're going to follow a similar structure. I'm going to show you where to clamp that particular knife, what angle to choose for that knife, the abrasive selection to use on it. We're also going to look at the knife anatomy to see if that changes how we approach sharpening that knife. Then we're going to inspect before we get started sharpening to see if there's any interference with the clamp or the scales or anything we should be looking out for. After that, it's time to sharpen. To get started, we're going to sharpen a knife that's in just about everybody's house, a kitchen knife. To be more specific, this is a Western style kitchen knife. These knives are typically sharpened at a wider angle because they do heavier duty work, so they'll be sharpened out to like a 20-degree angle. To get started, we're going to clamp this blade in the center. Clamp it in the middle, and once you have it clamped, we're going to set the angle. The angle is going to be set at 20 degrees. You can vary this if you'd like, but this is just what we recommend. Because this is a larger blade, about 8 inches long, we're going to want to use our large knife support. We're also going to use an abrasive selection of just 320, 600, and ceramic. The reason for that is this is going to take a while to sharpen this knife, and this is a great combination to give you a hard-working, easy-to-use edge in the kitchen. Now that it's time to sharpen, starting with a 320 grit, make 3 to 5 passes and establish a burr. Make sure you have a burr from the heel to the tip of the knife. Flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now work through your grit progression and refine the edge to your liking. The next knife we're going to sharpen is the other most common knife you'll find in a kitchen, and that's the Eastern style knife. This is like a Japanese chef's knife. These typically are thinner bladed and they tend to be sharpened at a steeper angle for doing jobs more like slicing. To get started sharpening this knife, we're going to again clamp this one in the center. Once you have the knife clamped up, you're going to want to install the large knife support. As far as an abrasive selection goes for this knife, because it's a thinner spine, we can get away with a finer selection. So we're going to go 600 ceramic leather. To get started sharpening, install the 600 grit abrasive. We're going to make those same sweeping passes from heel to tip. This will take about 5 to 10. A few more passes on this finer abrasive, but you should still be able to raise a burr in no time. Once you've established that burr along the entire edge, flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now you're ready to refine down through the ceramic and leather until you reach the refinement on your knife that you're looking for. Next up, we're going to sharpen some outdoor bushcrafting camp type knives. These are knives that need to hold up to some abuse, and they're built for it. They've got big, thick spines on them. They're made for being batoned on, and they're just workhorses. Typically, these knives are sharpened at a wider angle so that they can withstand that abuse. To get started, we're going to clamp this one up in the middle. Because these knives typically have pretty wide spines, you're going to want to back the clamp off quite a bit to get a hold of it. Once you've got it clamped in the center, you're going to want to make sure you have that blade support in place. As I mentioned earlier, these knives are typically sharpened at a wider angle, anywhere from 25 to 30 degrees. We're going to sharpen this one at 25. Looking at the knife, there's not much to worry about here. That choil will be easy enough to avoid as long as we make the sweeping strokes from heel to tip. Now we need to choose our abrasive. For abrasives, we're going to go with a 320 600 ceramic. That'll get this knife sharpened quickly and put a great edge on that'll hold up to the work that this knife's intended for. To get started sharpening, install the 320 grit abrasive. Starting from the heel, make that sweeping pass from heel to tip. Make 3 to 5 passes until you establish a burr along the entire edge. Once the burr is established, flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now work through your grit progression, 600 and ceramic, and refine that edge to your liking. Again, this doesn't have to be a fine edge because this knife's going to do some work. Next up, we're going to sharpen some fixed blade hunting knives. These knives get tasked with processing animals, so it's important that they're razor sharp. To get started sharpening this hunting knife, we're going to clamp it in the center. For the angle, these knives need to be slicey, so we're going to sharpen between 15 to 20 degrees. This Montana Knife Company Speed Goat is sharpened around 15. Now that the angle's set, we're just going to want to take a look at the anatomy of the knife. All I see on this is a choil we need to be careful of. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. As far as an abrasive selection goes, 320 600 ceramic will do just fine. That'll leave a nice toothy edge that'll also slice great. To get started sharpening, install the 320 grit plate. Make passes from heel to tip. Be sure to avoid that choil. Make 3 to 5 passes until you've established a burr along the entire edge of the knife. Then flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now work through your grit progression of 600 and ceramic and refine that edge to your liking. Next up, we're going to sharpen pocket knives. Pocket knives can be a little tricky because they come in all shapes and sizes. You've got things like leaf-shaped blades that can be a little tricky to clamp up. You've got large thumb studs on some knives that can interfere as you go to sharpen at certain angles. And then you just got your pretty boy knives that you want to be very careful of not making sure you don't hit the scales or anything like that. So how you approach pocket knives can vary, but typically when you go to clamp them, you're going to want to start right in the center. When clamping a leaf-shaped blade like the Spyderco Para 3, there's a bit of a nuance we want to cover. The important thing when clamping a knife like this is to ensure the spine rests all the way back in the V block of the clamp. Just try and purchase as much of the blade as you can. It's okay if part of it's hanging out. Now tighten it up and you're ready to go. The next knife that can be a little tricky to clamp up is knives with large thumb studs. We don't want to grind on that thumb stud. Again, we want to aim at the center of this knife, but just want to make sure that the clamp isn't in contact with the thumb stud in any way. Next, we're going to want to choose the angle to sharpen these knives to. Most pocket knives are sharpened between 20 and 25 degrees. We're going to sharpen these at 20. When it comes to choosing an abrasive for your pocket knife, you can create an awesome edge with a 320/600 ceramic, but we know some people strive to have a polished look or more refined edge on their pocket knives. For that, you'll want to use the entire abrasive selection. Before you get started sharpening, we're going to install the ceramic plate. This is a safe way to ensure that thumb studs and scales won't interfere once we get started sharpening. Lay the sharpening handle on the knife as if you're getting ready to sharpen, and move it around to ensure that it's not touching the thumb studs or the scales. If it is, you have a few options. You can either remove the thumb studs or increase the angle to clear the thumb stud itself. You can also put some tape on the thumb studs and scales to protect them from any scratching or marring. Now that you're ready to get started sharpening, install the 320 grit abrasive and make 3 to 5 passes until you establish a burr. Rotate the knife and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now work your way through each abrasive and refine the edge to your liking. Next, we're going to show you how to sharpen a Tanto style blade shape. These can be a bit tricky when it comes to sharpening because you need to treat each section of the knife as its own blade. That'll help you avoid ruining the transition on this knife. It's a pretty straightforward approach when it comes to sharpening. Where the nuance comes in is how you clamp the knife. Because Tantos vary in shape so much, you may need to clamp a bit differently depending on the blade shape. When it comes to most Tantos, you can clamp them like any other knife. However, if the secondary edge is at a pretty steep angle, you may need to re-clamp to sharpen that section of the knife. When it comes to an angle for a Tanto, most of them are sharpened from 20 to 25 degrees. We're going to sharpen this one at 20 degrees. As far as an abrasive selection, we're going to go with the 320/600 ceramic, but feel free to use all the abrasives in the selection if you like. When you're ready to get started sharpening, install the 320 grit, make 3 to 5 passes along the first section of the Tanto until you establish a burr. Be sure to sweep from the heel to the transition without passing that transition. Then start on the secondary edge and treat that as its own separate knife. Sharpen from the transition to the tip, make the same amount of passes and establish a burr. Now flip the knife over and repeat that same process, sharpening in sections until you establish a burr there as well. Now work through your grit progression until you reach the refinement on your Tanto that you want. Next, we're going to sharpen serrations. When it comes to serrations, the job isn't so much as to sharpen serrations as it is to maintain them. When they leave the factory, they're already sharp. Your job is to keep them that way. To do that with the Pro PA, we've incorporated a ceramic rod on the back of the sharpening handle. The approach with this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to bring the knife to the sharpening rod to get started. Remove any abrasive from the sharpening handle. Place the sharpening handle directly on the clamp. Then raise a few degrees until the handle is touching the clamp and the table. Now that you're ready to start sharpening, bring the knife to the ceramic rod. Nest the ceramic inside each scallop and work back and forth to restore sharpness. One of the more challenging knives to sharpen is a fillet knife. Due to the flexibility in the blade and the short height from the spine to the edge, it makes it difficult to clamp, and then this wants to move a lot as you sharpen it. What we found works best is to incorporate the small knife table. It can support the blade as you sharpen, and you can do it in sections. To set the angle on the fillet knife, lay it on the small knife table. Most fillet knives are sharpened from 15 to 20 degrees. We're going to set this one at 15 degrees. As far as abrasives go, we're going to use the 320/600 and ceramic. To get started sharpening, lay the knife on the small knife table. We're going to adjust until the edge of the knife hangs over the edge of the small knife table. Now we're going to use a dry erase marker to highlight the section we are going to sharpen. We recommend sharpening no more than an inch off each direction of the table to limit the amount of flex in the blade. Start sharpening on one section of the knife. Once you've established a burr all the way along that section, then move the knife down the table. Sharpen the rest of the knife down to the tip and establish a burr again. Once a burr is established along the entire length of the blade, flip the knife over and repeat the process on the opposite side. Now, progress through your abrasives, and you should be left with a sharp fillet knife ready for any task. One of the most challenging knives to sharpen is typically a small knife or a penknife. The reason for that is the clamp just engulfs the entire blade, leaving nowhere for you to sharpen. We solve for that with the small knife table. The small knife table supports the blade and makes it easy to access the edge. Set the pen knife up on the small knife table. Once your knife's set up, it's time to set the angle. Most pen knives are set at an angle between 20 and 25 degrees. We're going to sharpen this one at 20. As far as abrasive selection goes, we'll start at 600, 800, and ceramic. We don't need anything too aggressive for this small of a knife. To get started sharpening, install the 600 grit abrasive and make sweeping passes from heel to tip. Make 3 to 5 passes until you form a burr along the entire edge of the knife. Once a burr is established, flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Now work your way through each grit and you'll be left with a sharp knife. One of the most challenging knives to sharpen on any stone system is a blade with a curve in it. So a Hawksbill, a recurve, these Karambits. They're difficult because the flat stone can't reach into especially high arcing types of blades. For something like this, you'd probably be okay. But anything with a recurve in it or dramatic swoops, the flat stone just can't get to the edge and hit flush in order to create a new profile. Clamping could be a bit tricky. We're going to use the same approach as we did with the leaf-shaped blade. Lay the knife in the clamp so that the spine rests in the V-block. Try to get as centered as you can and get as much purchase on the knife as possible. Angles vary on most curved blades. This one's more of a pocket knife style. We're going to use a 20-degree angle. As far as an abrasive selection, we'll go with the 320 600 ceramic, leaving a nice toothy edge on this blade. Now to get started sharpening, we'll install the 320 grit, start at the heel and make a sweeping pass all the way to the tip. Repeat that process until you form a burr about 3 to 5 strokes. Once the burr is established, flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Then install the 600 grit and progress through until you reach desired sharpness. Next, we're going to do single bevel knives. They come in all shapes and sizes. One of the more common examples is sushi knives. They're single bevel for slicing. This is a pretty extreme version of a single bevel knife that'll do the job to show you how to sharpen one. When it comes to clamping a single bevel, clamp it in the center like you would any other knife. To set your angle, match the angle that's currently on the knife. As far as an abrasive selection goes, 320, 600 ceramic, and maybe even leather depending on the type of knife you're using. Sharpen as you would any other knife, but we're only going to sharpen one side. Make sweeping passes from heel to tip until you form a burr, then switch to your 600 grit and work across that as well, and then finish up with the ceramic. You should be left with a wire burr on the back side of your blade. To remove that burr, you're going to use a ceramic plate. Remove the knife from the sharpener. Lay the knife flat on the ceramic plate and move it back and forth to remove that burr. Next, we're going to sharpen a Scandi Grind knife. The advantage to a Scandi Grind knife is it has these tall bevels. That bevel goes all the way to the edge. There's no primary bevel on a Scandi Grind. It makes it really easy to resharpen in the field because it's easy to match that bevel. When it comes to sharpening on the Pro PA, we're just going to clamp it up like we would any other knife. Clamp the knife in the center. Then when it comes to the angle, you're just going to match it to the existing bevel that's been created on that knife. For this one, about 16 degrees. As far as an abrasive selection goes, 320, 600 ceramic will work great. To get started sharpening, install your 320 grit abrasive and make sweeping passes from heel to tip. Keep in mind that large bevel is removing a lot of material, so it's going to take a lot longer to form that burr than it would on any normal knife. Keep making passes until you've got a burr from heel to tip. Then flip the knife over and repeat that process on the opposite side. Work through your grit progression. You should be left with a nice, newly sharpened Scandi Grind knife. If you're still watching this video, congratulations. You now know how to sharpen every knife you own using the professional Precision Adjust system. Or maybe I forgot one. If that's the case, leave a comment down below. We'll get to it at a later date. If you're wanting more details on how to use your Pro PA, there's a video linked here that can show you how to use your user's guide. It goes over how to set up and use all the things we talked about in detail for this system. If you found this video helpful, do us a favor, leave a like, subscribe for more video content like this. Thanks for watching, guys.